Welcome. My name's Kirsten. I'm part of the marketing team at Florist Books, and I'm super delighted to see so many of you here tonight to celebrate Justin and his fabulous new book, Haarville. I just wanted to say a very special little shout out to anyone who's here from North Queensferry Primary School. Yeah, big cheer for North Queensferry. And now we're going to celebrate the fantastically fishy, brilliant new adventure story by Justin Davies. So for those of you who don't know Justin, he spent years flying all over the world as cabin crew before he eventually hung up his wings to focus on writing for children. You might have already chuckled through his first book, which was called Help, I Smell a Monster, and it won the Fantastic Book Awards in 2021. And then the follow-up, Whoa, I Spy a Werewolf. Justin lives with his husband and Sally, the rescue greyhound, in Fife, Scotland. And when he's not writing, he continues with his lifelong quest to bake the perfect scone. Put me down for a dozen when you finally crack it, please. So in a moment, we're going to bring Justin up on stage. He's going to tell us a little bit about the inspiration for Haarville and why eating seaweed was part of his research process. He's going to read us a little snippet from the book, and then it'll be your chance to get fishy and dive into creating some wonderfully disgusting seafood menus. And there will be a chance for you to ask Justin all of your burning questions at the end as well. They may or may not be about seafood. There's a theme, in case you hadn't noticed. But before that, I would like to please welcome Florist Editorial Director Sally Poulsen, who would love to say a few words.
More about his magnificent new book, Haarville. We Florist folk have been friends with Justin for quite a few years now, and huge fans of his writing for all that time. We first met back in 2015 when Justin was shortlisted for an annual prize for new children's writing that we run called Kelpie's Prize. If you're a keen children's writer, entries close next Tuesday. There's still time to enter, and we're really looking forward to reading all the stories. We've kept in touch with Justin since then, mostly through his wonderful work with Scooby, the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, which is a little bit of a mouthful.
And there's a big group from them this evening.
Indeed.
Hey!
So lovely to see you all here tonight. So I was really thrilled when Justin's agent, Therese, sent us a new manuscript called Haarville, which sounded extremely exciting. My colleague Jenny, Justin's editor, who's also here tonight, tweeting away. She read it in one sitting because she just could not put it down.
Wow.
I didn't know that.
You didn't know that? No.
She zoomed through it on a Saturday afternoon. She couldn't put it
Was that when it was still 75,000 words?
That
Yeah.
is how good this book is. It was no longer 75,000 words, but it was absolutely fabulous from the very beginning when we first read it. So from that moment on, we were all completely hooked and determined to publish it. Justin, you've created such a unique world and characters in Haarville. It's mysteriously murky, darkly hilarious, and dripping with seaside atmosphere, as well as limpet juice.
Yes, limpet juice.
We're excited and very proud to be working with you on your wonderful new book.
Thank you very much, Sally. I'm going to go this side.
You want to go that
Yes.
side? Okay. So Justin and I are just going to have a little bit of chat. There will be a chance at the end for you guys to ask any questions of your own. But first of all, Justin, why don't you just tell us a little bit about Haarville? Give us the elevator pitch.
The elevator pitch. Thanks for putting me on the spot, Kirsten. The elevator. Don't listen, you guys. No, I'm going to try and do the elevator pitch. Haarville is a darkly comic mystery adventure set in an isolated, murky, misty seaside community. And strangers arrive and try to upset the balance of life. So it's up to my main character, Manx, and his friends to put things right and save the village. How's that?
I'm intrigued.
That's almost as if I practiced it.
I've read it already,
Yeah.
but I'm still intrigued. Okay, so what inspired Haarville? Tell us a bit about that.
Well, there's a few things that inspired Haarville. So, and this is where, I mean, some of the people here, some of the younger people here know about this already, about the inspirations that I use. So I was inspired by a number of things to write Haarville, and this all happened quite a long time ago. Back in Before 2015 was when I first had the idea. So there's if we can have the first slide. So, and this is quite a busy slide, but the story's genesis, where it started, was from a chance conversation in a pizza restaurant in Kinross with the person who served the pizzas. And I can't remember how we got this conversation going, but it turned out that they knew about this town in Germany that is supposed not to exist. Well, nobody thinks it exists. Everyone's heard of it, but no one knows where it is on a map, so they don't really believe it exists. And I didn't believe this, so I looked it up when I went home. And it's a real conspiracy. It's called the Bielefeld conspiracy. And so these are actual slides. I found this online. So it's a place that really does exist. The townsfolk are a bit unhappy about this, apparently. So I got this idea for a story set in a town that nobody knows quite where it is. And I thought, who would want to live in a town like that? What sort of people would need to live in a place that no one could find? So that was the first inspiration for it. The second inspiration came from the name. So this is one of my favourite nonsense poems. It's the Jabberwocky from Alice Through the Looking Glass. And I've always loved this poem. I'm not going to read it now. I've always loved this poem, but there's one word in it that always struck me, and that's manxome. Long time the manxome foe he sought. And I thought one day I'm going to write a story with a character called Manxome. And I wrote this down in my notebooks years and years ago. And this was my opportunity, because I thought I needed an unusual sounding name to go with an unusual setting. And Manx was the perfect opportunity for it. So that's the name. So we've got the place, we've got the name, and then a few other things kind of all joined together at the same time. So as anyone who lives in this part of the world knows, we get swathed in the sea mist, the Haar, quite frequently. Especially down in North Queensferry, where I live and where lots of you live, it often covers the village. And I thought, well, a place that no one can find would probably be covered in Haar most of the time. So there was that. And then in St Monans on the East Nuka Five, I'm sure lots of people know St Monans. It's one of my favourite places. And having been there lots and lots of times, it struck me that this was a perfect sort of template for the main setting for the story. And in particular, this is an image from the church in St Monans. They have model ships hanging from the kind of the beams and the rafters inside the church. And I thought, well, I'd love to use something like that in my story. So there is a scene with ships just like this hanging from a church.
Memory ships,
yeah,
right?
absolutely. Memory ships, absolutely. So there was all these things came together. And that's a picture of St Monans, just to give you an illustration of the village. So Haarville looks a little bit like this. That's where I got the idea for how the town was going to be laid out. We're going to look at the maps a bit later, aren't we?
I think we did send some of these pictures to the illustrator when we were
Oh, is that what
the
you
cover
did?
design.
Okay,
I think
fantastic.
St Monans
Yeah,
Harbour was
yeah,
one of the
yeah.
reference images that was used.
And that is that Crail? Yeah, thank you, Scott. We have someone from the East Nook at the back of the room there. So
East Nook knowledge.
that's Crail. So all the fishing villages around the East Nook kind of built together to create Haarville. So I took aspects of all of those places when I was building the village in the story. I think that's the inspiration. What's next? Oh, research, yes.
So yes, you had the inspiration.
Yes.
And then came the research.
Came the research. So most of this book was written during the first lockdown. I'd started it a long time ago and then shelved it whilst I was doing the Monsters books, which some of you know about. In fact, I think most of you know about. So I had to shelve it whilst I was busy doing those. And then during the first lockdown, I found myself with nothing to do because I was still cabin crew at the time, flying. And of course, I was furloughed. I wasn't allowed to work. So I thought, well, I'm going to get Haarville back out and I'm going to finish this thing. And I couldn't do any research at the time because I wasn't allowed to travel anywhere. But I had already been and taken photographs in the earlier days of research. So I began to put these boards together to remind me of what I needed to use as inspiration. So these are lots of the kind of houses, cottages around the fishing villages. So I used these to help create the atmosphere in the story. And I also researched, I built these boards with lots of seabirds. This is how I do my research for my story. So when everyone is creating their stories, are you listening, everyone? Top tips here for creating stories. Do lots of research. Get lots of pictures together, put them on a board, and then you can use that to help you create your stories. So these all helped inspire me. When I was stuck indoors and I wasn't allowed to travel anywhere, I used these boards of illustrations and images to help me create the story. So we've got seabirds, we've got the seaweed. We'll talk about seaweed again in a minute. Lots of shells, because there's lots of shellfish in the story. and all the different vegetation that exists on the coast, because Haarville is an isolated place. They don't have shops, they can't go to Aldi, so they have to go and find their own food. There we are. So, once lockdown was finished, I was allowed to go and travel again. So I did spend some time going back to the places that I'd already put into the story, and to help me get more of an idea of the atmosphere. So this was a video that I recorded relatively recently, but I went back to the places that are in the story. Should we just play it? And
Yeah, let's go.
yeah. Okay, so we're going to visit 3 real-life locations that have inspired places in my new novel, Haarville. Let's go! Location number 1. This is North Queensferry Light Tower, and in Haarville, there's a very similar light tower in chapter 13. This is location number 2. It's Lower Largo Beach in Fife, and Limpet Bay in Haarville is very similar to this. Location number 3, St Monan's Church in Haarville. I've renamed it, and it's called St Serph's Chapel. Story, and when I was editing the story, because when you write a story and you want it published, it has to go through lots of rounds of editing. Did you know that? You know you do editing in class when you do your literacy. I have to do it too when I'm writing my stories. So this book has been edited a few times, and so doing these trips, these research trips, helped me make sure that I got all the details absolutely right. Big part of writing a story is doing the research.
Yeah.
What's on the next slide? Ah, the maps. These are fun.
Yes, we love the maps.
So when I was first writing the first draft of the story years ago, I realised I needed a map to help me find my own way around the town as I was writing the story. Because if you don't have something like that, I realised my characters were getting lost as they left their front doors and tried to find their way to school or to the cafe, because I wasn't quite sure where they needed to go in the story. So I drew my own maps to help me remember where everything was located in Haarville. And I can't draw very well. As you can probably tell, these are my attempts at drawing maps the way that I thought the village looked in my head. And then at one point, the lovely people at Kelpies asked me, oh, scoot back one. Yeah. They asked me to send them a map, so that they told me they were going to put a map in the book, which you've all found, and it's fantastic. So I sent them these wonderful versions of my own map, and then I realised they weren't really very clear, and they might not get the right idea of what I had in my head. So then I had to go at doing one online instead. And I don't think I did such a bad job with that.
No, this is really good.
Yeah. So I went
That's
online,
very impressive.
something called Incarnate, and you can create your own maps online. So I put this together as a template for Kelpies to use to create the fantastic map that is in the book. And there it is, which I just love. This map is fantastic.
And there's an interactive version of this map on our website. You might have seen the little flyers with a link to it, and you can click on the locations, and it'll come up with a little snippet.
It's really
from the
cool.
book. Some of
So
them have
some of the
pictures.
locations come up with photos of actual places, so you can have a go at that when you get home.
Someone's on it already.
Is that right?
Well done.
It's really cool. I love it. Thank you for doing that for us. So there's the map of Haarville, because you need a map to help you create a story sometimes. A map's a really good place to start when you're writing a story. What's next?
What's next?
Oh, yeah.
Fish.
So this is a bit more about the research I did. So I was looking for some really unusual names for all the characters in the story, because it's such an unusual place. I didn't want them all to have regular names. I wanted to add to the sense of mystery and intrigue, and I needed some unusual names. I thought, well, I might as well make them fishy, because we're set in a fishing village. So I found this online, the Glossary of Scottish Dialect Fish and Trade Names from the Scottish Fisheries, 1989. It's a fascinating read, and it runs to about 40 pages, and it contains words from all around Scotland, old words, archaic words, and words that are still in use now for all types of fish, and anything connected with sea fish, shellfish, all that kind of thing. So many of the names in the story I've literally pulled directly from this pamphlet and put them in the story. I don't think I've given them any credit for that in the book. But it's from 1989, so I guess it doesn't matter anymore.
Well,
So
you've
there's
said
lots
it
of so lots of the characters' names come from that pamphlet. So that's another way I've researched the story, using materials that I can find elsewhere to help me with my ideas. There we go.
So did any of the names in this book inspire a character, or did you have the character first and then find the name to match?
That's a really good question. So let's think about some of the characters. Well, there's Sculpin is one of the characters. I'm not going to give too much away, but Sculpin is very mysterious and a little bit shady. And I just thought the name Sculpin sounds mysterious and shady. It's got those hard sounds in it, so I thought I'd give him that name. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
brilliant, brilliant.
There's lots more names in there to use, so I'm going to use that again one day for more stories. And this is another research trip. So this is the seaweed foraging trip that I went on as part of my research. And because I couldn't do that during lockdowns, I had to save that until last summer. And it was just before we did our final edit for the story, so I was able to use some of the experience from this seaweed foraging trip, and I managed to get some of the details into the story at the last minute, which was brilliant. So that really is me eating seaweed on the beach.
You look much happier than I would have expected for someone who's eating seaweed.
Well, I think this is before I'd eaten the seaweed.
Was this before that you
That's
said?
before. That's when we were foraging down on the rocks. This is in St Monans, actually, and this guy here, he's called Jason, and he runs East Nook Seaweed, and he's brilliant. He's Maori, and he does a Maori greeting when you start the tour. It's fantastic. And he gets down onto the rocks, and he shows you how to pull up all the seaweed, and then we were all eating it straight off the rocks. But health and safety. It's not something that you should go and do down in North Queensferry, because have you seen the big ships sailing past there? I wouldn't want to eat the seaweed there. So if you're going to pick seaweed, go with someone who knows what they're doing. There we are. I have to say that because I think I should say that. So I was only picking what I was told to pick by this guy here. So yeah, this is all seaweed, and there's some videos in a second. This, anyone know what that is? Anyone here know what that is? Max, what's that? It's not a barnacle, it's bigger than a barnacle. Andrew, what do you think it is?
A shell with a creature.
It is a shell with a creature in it. Good answer. Excellent answer. I walked into that one. Have you seen that before? Can you remember what it is? It's a limpet. It's a limpet. You've seen limpets. Everyone knows what limpets are. They're the ones that sit on rocks. They actually move around. If you do a stop motion film, you can actually watch them, a time-lapse film. You can see them moving around. They always go back to the same place. Did you know? I didn't know that. I wanted to see what a limpet looked like because in the story, which we'll find out in a minute because I'm going to read a section where there are some limpets in it, they eat a lot of limpets. I needed to know that this was something that humans are allowed to do. I didn't eat the limpet. I wish I had tried it. I made this person eat the limpet for me. And he did, so that I knew my characters could safely eat limpets.
But they look so delicious, Justin.
They really don't look delicious at all. Are we okay for time? So yes. The next slide, we've got some images of me actually eating seaweed. It's quite noisy because it was a windy day, but should we just have a look at the videos? The first one is sea spaghetti.
It looks like a worm.
So, as the name suggests,
It was delicious. We had that cooked with pesto.
It looked like a worm.
It did look like a worm. It felt a little bit like a worm.
It looks exactly like a worm.
That's kelp, which I was calling tagliatelle of the sea. I don't know if it is called that, but that's what I called it. As you can hear, it was a really windy day.
Very windy.
You're not eating it, so...
And the next one is, this is gutweed. And gutweed is edible. And in the story, I get my characters making tea from gutweed. It was actually really tasty.
I'm surprised it looks like...
And this last one is me eating a biscuit with some seaweed pickle on it.
Yum.
It was really tasty.
That sounds disgusting.
It was yummy.
Disgusting.
Because seaweed is edible. Hands up who's eaten seaweed here before. Lots of people have eaten seaweed. There you go. There's lots of seaweeds that you can eat. So my characters eat lots of seaweed. I needed to eat it as well, so I knew what it tasted like. There we go. That's the research.
There we go. Seaweed eating.
Seaweed eating.
Fantastic.
The lengths I went to write this story.
It's good to know that you put in all of that effort so that we don't have to. Can we hear a bit from the story now?
Is it time for a story? Yes.
Time for the story.
Right. Okay, so I'm not going to read a very long section, and it's not going to give anything away if you haven't read it yet. So this section is in one of the cafes in Haarville. And the main character, Manx, is with his best friend, Fantouche, and one of the strangers that's arrived in town, and he's a boy called Nathan, and the three of them are sitting in a cafe having lunch during their school break. What are these? Nathan stabbed at the soft, doughy ball with his finger, pulling it back as if the limpet bun was about to attack him. They look horrible. Shh! Manx glared at him. Madame Bombeur's very proud of her baking, and they're not horrible at all. They're our favourites. He stuffed 2 buns into his mouth and chewed. Steady on, laughed Fantouche. Didn't Sculpin feed you last night? He was serving pickled puffin feet, said Manx, through a mouthful of limpety dough. They were too rubbery. All I ate was the crab claws you gave me. He grabbed a 3rd bun whilst Fantouche bit into her first. A jet of limpet juice squirted out the other side. Oh, they're really good today, she licked her lips. Madame Bombeur boils the limpets in honey, then rolls them in sea plantain flour, she explained to Nathan, who was sitting tight-lipped and with his arms folded. Oui, that's right, said Madame Bombeur, placing a 2nd plate of buns down on the table. Her brown hands and arms were covered in flour, as was her face and curly black hair. Madame Bombeur baked delicious buns and pastries, but her kitchen was notoriously chaotic. Freshly baked chaque matin, every morning. She turned to Fantouche. As long as you keep picking limpets, there'll be limpet buns for lunch. Hold on, said Nathan, lifting a bun with the end of his fork, as if he was expecting something unpleasant to crawl out. You pick those slippery suckers, and then she bakes them into a yucky bun like this? Madame Bombeur served up an especially sour look for Nathan. Perhaps you would care to learn some Haarville manners from your friends, she snapped. And once you've done that, you can teach some to your father. Pestering me like that for my perpetuals when I was up to my eyeballs in plantain dough. It's not on, I tell you, non. Tears sprang from Madame Bombeur's eyes, trickling through the flour on her face. How am I supposed to bake my afternoon batch of buns without my perpetual bun baker? You let him take your bun baker, Manx said. He and Father G had only ever serviced Madame Bombeur's precious perpetual device when the bakery was closed. I didn't let him do anything, she sobbed. He waved some pesky parchment in my face saying the elders gave him permission to borrow it. Borrow? Steal, more like. It's an outrage. My poor papa will be spinning in his burial barrel as we speak. The rest of their lunch break was decidedly uncomfortable, with Manx exchanging daggered looks with Nathan, who continued prodding his bun until Fantouche snatched it and stuffed it into her mouth before shunting her chair back to leave. Everybody here eats limpets, said Manx, so you might as well get used to it, Nathan. They're our favourite thing about Haarville, apart from Death Day, of course. Isn't that right, Fan? Fantouche giggled. Absolutely, and on Death Day, we get to eat double the amount. Nathan pulled another sour-looking face. I hate it here, he muttered, pushing past them both towards the door. And whatever Death Day is, it sounds ridiculous. There's nothing ridiculous about Death Day, said Manx, glaring at Nathan. It's the best day of the year. Better than Christmas? Asked Nathan. I don't know much about Christmas, said Fantouche, but Death Day is brilliant. We get to go over to St. Serph's Chapel to spend time with all our dead friends and family. What? When? Next week, said Manx. Everybody gets dressed up and we all pack massive picnics. Then we wait until the tide's really low. It needs to be the lowest equinox tide, said Fantouche. It's the only time of year we can cross to the sea stack without drowning. Well, the chapel used to be connected to Haarville until a major storm smashed through the headland, explained Manx. So now we can only go over on Death Day. That's why it's such a big celebration. And once we're inside the chapel, continued Fantouche, all the models of our ancestors' wrecked ships are lowered down from the ceiling, and we take out and dust off our family treasures and sing and dance and eat. Limpets, of course, said Manx. Lots and lots of limpets. Fried, grilled, boiled, baked, juiced or candied. He stared at Nathan. Yum. Sounds horrible, said Nathan, whose face had drained of the little colour it usually had. Wrong, said Fantouche. It's brilliant, and we get to stay for almost the entire day until the tide drops again, and then we all troop back here. Yeah, for more limpets, said Manx with a smile. Nathan looked about ready to throw up, but instead he glared at them. This place is weird, he said, pushing through the door and stomping off towards the academy. And so are you. There we are. That's that chapter. What did you think? Was that good? Do you think you want to try some limpet buns?
No.
Oh, well, that's a shame because I've got some here ready baked. No, we don't. No, there's no limpet buns unless. Did you make some limpet buns? No, not today. Okay, all right. But we've got time for this, have we? Yes. Okay, excellent. So what I thought we would do is, it's over to you. Well, it might be over to some of you as well, but it's mostly over to you. And we are going to create our own cafe menu, thinking about some of the weird and wonderful things you might find at the seaside, clinging to the rocks, swimming in the sea, that kind of thing. What do you think? Should we have a go? Yeah. Brilliant. So I've got another slide just to give you an idea. These are things that are already in the story. So we can't pick these. So for example, in the story, and you know when you go to a restaurant or a cafe, you've got a list of starters, main courses, puddings, and drinks. So we're going to do something similar to that. In the story, you might find barnacle nuts, fish entrail soup, that sounds nice, kelp crackers with limpet paste, and then for a main course, you could have sea spaghetti like the sea spaghetti I had when I was sea foraging, puffed whelks, and lobster whip. Actually, that sounds quite nice. Dessert, sweet limpet buns, yummy, sea carrot cake, loganberry jam puffs, and drinks. These are all things that are actually in the story. They drink clam juice, gutweed tea, and limpet water. Ooh, I'm not sure I like the sound of limpet water. So we're going to create some different things for our own cafe. But I think we need a name for the cafe first. So can we think of a name, a seaside-y name? In the story, the cafe is called the Sinking Teapot. We could have something like that, or we could have something different. Have you got any ideas? This is open to everybody. Younger people and older people. Let's have some ideas. Well, there's hands up. Bonnie, what was your idea for the name of a cafe? The Seaside Cafe, that's a good choice. Ben, what do you think?
The Sinking Submarine Restaurant. That's like a restaurant in a submarine that goes around and through the bay and stuff.
That's a cool idea. So we've got the Sinking Submarine Restaurant. What was yours, Bonnie?
Seaside Cafe.
The Seaside Cafe. One more. Andrew, what do you think?
Sea Hut.
The Sea Hut. What do we think? Which one should we go for? We're going to have a, or should we could call it all of them. We could put them all up as a choice, and then we could pick at the end. Oh, so we need a name for a cafe from one of the older people here. So hands up if you've got a name for a cafe. I see a hand at the back. Russell, what's your idea? The Rusty Anchor. Excellent. Should we pick one?
Yeah.
Should we have a really unscientific, undemocratic vote?
Yeah.
Okay. Hands up if you like the Sinking Submarine. That's, yeah, that's the names. Seaside Cafe. Oh, that's popular too. The Sea Hut. The Rusty Anchor. I think it was the first one, the Sinking Submarine. Yeah, I think it was the Sinking Submarine. So we're at the Sinking Submarine Cafe. Now we need to start putting our menu together. So we're going to have some starters. So maybe a soup or a snack or something like that. Let's go, Forbes, what's your idea? Seaweed soup. Excellent. Seaweed soup. Any other ideas? Jude, what's your idea? Small roasted crabs. How small? Really, really small?
No, that's small.
Enough that you can get a good crunch from them.
Yes.
Brilliant. Excellent. Another idea. Martina, what's your idea for a starter? Limpets. Well, we've already got limpets in the story. How are you going to cook your limpets for a starter? Are you going to have them raw, or are you going to have them cooked? Cooked. How are you going to cook them? Fried limpets. Excellent. How many is that? Is that 3? Should we have one? Should we have one more idea? Maybe from. What's your idea for a starter? Crab claws. Excellent. Crab claws. Okay. Well, we'll have all of those. We can put all of these on the menu. What do you think, Andrew? Have you got another one?
Yeah.
What's yours? Another starter. What's that?
Barn weed coals.
Barn weed coals. I like that. You've made that one up. I love that. Barn weed calls. Yeah, absolutely. And what kind of snack is that? Is it hot? Is it cold? Is it crunchy? Is it really smelly? I bet it's really smelly. Brilliant. That's our starters. Let's do some main courses. So let's think. We need something to fill us up, something that you can get from the coast, pull it off the rocks, find it in the sea, maybe dig it up from the sand. What have we got? Any ideas? What's your idea? Lobster. How would you like to cook your lobster? What do you think? What are you going to have it with? Are you going to have it with potatoes? Yeah, lobster with potatoes. Excellent idea. I'd have that. Any more ideas? Hello. Come on. Come and take a seat. We are just creating our very own seaside menu from a seaside cafe with weird and wonderful food. Okay, so far we've got some names for the cafe, we've got some starters that you might find in the cafe, and now we're looking at some main courses. But we're going to try and make them weird and a bit something like you might not want to eat. Let's think. Let's have another idea. Max, have you got an idea? Fish squid. Fish. Yes. In a squid. So a fish stuffed squid. No, squid stuffed fish. Anyway, one of those. A fish with a squid stuffed in it. Oh, lovely. What should we call it? Squiddy fish. Fish squid. Fish squid. Fish as squid. Oh, I like that. Fish as squid. Yeah, that's brilliant. Fantastic. Another one. What's your idea for a main course? Say that again. Soup. Luxury limpets. What makes it luxury? What's that? It's fancy. So fancy luxury limpet soup. That sounds delicious. Any more ideas? Alfie, have you got an idea? What do you think? Something for a main course, something that's going to fill you up that you might find on the beach or on the rocks. What do you think? Starfish. Oh, starfish soup. Can you cook starfish? How are you going to cook the starfish? Are you going to boil it? Boiled starfish soup. That sounds really good. Any ideas? Yes, what's your idea? Ragworm carbonara. I haven't had my dinner yet, and I'm going to try and find that on my way home. Ragworm carbonara. That's delicious. Jill, what's your idea? You're desperate. You're desperate to say. Yes, you are. Octopus Whopper. Wow. That sounds yummy. Thanks for that. Right, let's do some desserts. We're going to do desserts now. So, any ideas for some really tasty? Alfie, you're bursting to say something as well. Come on, what's your idea for a dessert?
I'll let Bonnie go first.
Oh, okay, Bonnie, you're about to burst too. What's your idea?
Clam and starfish pie.
Pie. Is that a pudding?
Yeah.
It's a pudding. Okay, what makes it a pudding? Are you going to put something sweet with it?
Because it's so as starfish sprinkles.
Oh, it's got starfish sprinkles on it.
Maybe, so it's tiny.
Okay, brilliant. I like that. I like the starfish sprinkles. Tiny little starfish that you can sprinkle on like hundreds and thousands. Excellent. More puddings. Freya, what's your idea?
Gutweed with crumpets.
Gutweed with crumpets, like a gutweed jam on crumpets. That sounds delicious. Rui, what's your idea?
Fish cake.
Fish cake. Fish cake? Ah! Come on, that was pretty clever. I like that. Fish cake. Excellent. Has it got icing on it? It doesn't have icing. What makes it a cake then? What's inside it? Fish. And is there some sugar or honey in there to make it sweet? What kind of fish? Sardine fish cake. Lovely. I might need a cup of coffee to wash that one down. Excellent idea. Any more ideas? Let's have two more. Martina, what's yours?
Lobster cupcake with tiny lobster sprinkles.
Lobster cupcake with tiny lobster sprinkles. Charlie, have you got an idea?
Oyster pie.
What's that?
Oyster pie. The oysters.
Oh, okay.
Like the oyster.
Oyster pie, sweet oyster pie. Shall we have some starfish ice cream as well? Wow. Okay, we've got time. I think we've got time for one more. There's so many hands up. Well, let's do them all quickly. Okay, what's yours? Quickly. Sea salted seaweed. Crab stuff with worms. Sea worms. Doesn't make it any less exciting. Sea worms, lovely. Crab stuff with sea worms. Max, what's yours? Jellyfish jelly. Oh, that's really good. I like that one. Corey? Chocolate fish. Croissant. Chocolate fish croissant. Yum.
Deep fried tentacles with sugar on top.
What are the tentacles from?
A kraken.
A kraken. There's some big tentacle. Yeah.
Like the one from your first book.
Oh, the kraken from Help I Smell a Monster. Excellent. Deep fried kraken tentacles. This is fun. I'm rushing to the Sinking Submarine Cafe straight after this to order literally everything. It does exist in our imaginations, Bonnie.
Cotton kelp.
Cotton kelp. Excellent. And one more from Alfie. Well done, Kirsten.
Seaweed sundae.
Seaweed sundae. Fabulous. Well, I think we should all go into business at the Sinking Submarine Cafe, don't you? Yeah, fantastic. Well done, everyone. I think we should give mostly the people on the floor here a huge round of applause because that's an amazing menu. Well done, everyone. Excellent, fantastic. Should we have some questions? Yeah. Is there time? Yeah. Whew.
How we do drinks?
What's that? Oh, we didn't do drinks, did we? We forgot about
We've
drinks.
probably not got time for drinks.
I'll tell you what, when you come up afterwards to get your book signed, tell me your ideas for a drink. But well spotted, because we completely forgot. Okay, let's do some questions. Rory first, what's your question?
Characters which?
Which characters which? So what are the characters in the story? You forgot the names. There's lots of characters in the story. I'm not in it, no. Charlie, that's a very sensible question because often authors put themselves into their stories and there maybe is a little bit of me in Manx is the main character. So Manx is the main character and then his friend Fantouche, they're both from Haarville and then a boy called Nathan turns up. So that's the three main characters. On the front cover, the boy in the yellow jacket is Manx and that's Fantouche. Oh, I've forgotten the most important character. There's a bird, an oyster catcher in the story called Olu. And Olu is a really important character in this story. So there we go. Another question. Andrew, what's your question?
What's the main theme about?
The main theme of this story, well, it is a mystery adventure. So the main characters have a mystery to solve to save their town. You can, Andrew, yes. Excellent. What's your question?
What was your favourite chapter to write?
That's a really excellent question. What was my favourite chapter to write? There's a lot of favourite chapters in here. The one that I read is a really favourite one because I just love the fact that they're both really enjoying the food that they've got in the cafe and Nathan really hates it. So I like that chapter. There's a really exciting chapter towards the end and I'm not going to tell you what happens in it. But I'm not telling you. But they are in grave danger in that chapter on the water. So there we go. Are there any other questions? Are there any questions from the back of the room?
Hang on, let me come up with the microphone so that we can hear you on the live stream.
This sounds so exciting. So I'm wondering whether there can be any more adventures in Haarville after this.
Oh, are there any more adventures in Haarville? I have ideas for more adventures in Haarville, definitely. I've got ideas that happen after, and I've got ideas that happen before as well. And as I said, I've got many names to choose from the Scottish Fisheries pamphlet. Haven't exhausted that yet. More questions. Alfie, what's your question?
Like, would you do flashbacks of what they saw, like, before they were friends? Would you do, like, flashbacks?
I could do flashbacks. I don't normally write flashbacks in my stories, but flashbacks are a really useful thing to put in stories. Good idea. I might do that. Yeah, excellent question. How much time have we got for questions before we carry on? A few more minutes?
Yeah, we can do another, maybe 2 or 3 more questions.
There's 4 hands up. I'll do 4.
Perfect, we'll do 4.
Well, I'll do 4. Ben, what's yours?
One was, I've got 2 kind of questions.
Let's have one. Just one.
What book is your favourite one to write?
Well, at the minute, it's Haarville. I enjoyed writing this an awful lot, and because I'm just spending lots of time talking about this at the moment, that's my favourite one at the moment. I think the one that I've just written is always my favourite book. Yeah, Haarville's my favourite at the moment. What's your question?
Are you going to make, like you did with Selfish Will once, are you going to make like a second book to Haarville?
Well, I hope so. There's always lots of ideas, so we'll have to wait and see. Freya, what's your question?
Why is it fish inspired?
Why is it fish inspired? Well, that's a good question because the location is set by the seaside. And so I thought that most of the inspiration should come from things that you find at the seaside. And there's a lot of fish at the seaside. And fish are fun. You can do lots with fish in a story because they're not all, some fish are a bit ugly and some fish are a little bit creepy and probably don't taste very nice. And some fish are dangerous. So I thought fish would be a really cool thing to put in the story. I'm doing 2 more questions. Jill, what's your question?
What was the hardest thing to write about in this book? Or what was the most difficult part of the book to write?
The most difficult part, the hardest part to write. If my editors are there, Sally and Jenny, the hardest part, what was the thing that caused the most trouble? I think the scene that we worked quite a lot on to get right was the scene when they are on the water and towards the end of the story where it reaches, I can't say too much because it will spoil it, but when the characters are really striving to succeed in their mission. And we spent a long time working on that to make it work. So that was the hardest scene to write, I think. And one more question. Max, you've had your hand up for ages. What's your question?
What's your favourite picture in the book?
Well, my favourite picture, there's not so many pictures in the book because it's a book for slightly older children, there's not so many pictures, but there's lots of pictures that I love in here. I think the front cover is just amazing. And I'd love to meet the person who did this illustration because most of you that know me know that I can't draw. So obviously somebody else has to, thank you. So somebody else has to, somebody else does the drawing. This is a wonderful illustration from an Italian illustrator called Francesca Friccirilli, who I'd love to meet one day to say thank you. So I think that, but also, oh, don't we love the map? The map's amazing. There we are. Okay. Great questions, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. Can we have one last round of applause for Justin? So Justin is going to be sitting down the front here, I think. So if you want to get your book signed, please bring it up. Make sure it's been paid for before you get it signed.
Oh, hold on a minute.
And also we have cake, so please come and have yourself to another drink and grab a bit of cake. You're all far too excited.